Isa na namang buwan ang lumilipas, hindi pa lumipas, ilang oras pa. Matatapos na ang Hunyo at tayo July 1st na po, ika-una ng Hulyo pagkagising natin bukas. Ano? And it is going to be an ordinary day sa atin. I can't think of anything special tomorrow. Ang special po ay sa China. Kasi po napakalaking one-week celebration sila dahil sa selebrasyon ng anibersaryo ng ika-100 taon ng anibersaryo ng Partido Komunista ng China or CPC, China, a Communist Party of China. I think that's the official name kasi yung iba CPP, Chinese or CPP bang iba? CCP, Chinese Communist Party, which I think is not correct. Anyway, we'll also talk about that a little later. We have an hour to discuss these domestic developments. And another hour po, may panauhin tayo. Papakilala mamaya ni Maestra Ana Manindogoy, isa sa mga awardee tulad ni Kaado, no, ng APPCU, Association Award for the Promotion of Philippine-China Understanding ng APCU, ng Association for Philippine-China Understanding, na the oldest Philippine-China Link Association or Friendship Association, established in 1975 pa. Is that correct, Kaana?
1974.
1974, 1 year before the establishment of the diplomatic relations.
Yes, po.
Diplomatic relations. And ang pinaka Hall of Famer ay si Madam Imelda Marcos, who really opened the gates to the meeting with Chairman Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping at that time. And Francis Chua, is that correct? Two, no? Dalawang sila sa Hall of Fame. Francis Chua, who is a big businessman and presidente of two Chinese-Filipino chambers of commerce organizations.
So, and also po, si Mentong din is part of the awardees. Nasa category si Mentong ng outstanding. Din si Kaado. Yes po. At si Kaado din po. As a major category po. Both of them are maestros, no, or awardees. And we will have an invited guest as well who's part of the awardees as well.
That's right. At marami pang ipapakilalang mga awardees po sa 10 ito dito sa mga programa natin, no? Sa mga darating na linggo. Well, it's a good thing naman dahil napakilala, halimbawa, nabigyan ng pakikilala o recognition, mga tulad ni Kaado who not so prominent in the business circles and all these circles, but has made a very significant contribution with his book. And of course, over the past 10 years, we have been helping each other project the true and correct information about Philippine-China relations and goings-on. Okay, that's going to be one of the subject matter. But itong nakarang linggo, actually itong nakarang buwan, buhay na po ang politika, but it especially started fireworks again nung yumao po yung si Noynoy Aquino. And up to now, there are many lingering questions. I think justifiably, maraming tanong ang ibang mga tao. At naging malinaw naman na sinubukan na gamitin ito. Mamaya may video tayo. Ewan ko kung maraming nakakita na, pero ay talagang kitang-kitang parang nangangampanya na si Chris Aquino. Anyway, si Kaado muna. Marinig natin ang boses ni Kaado this afternoon.
Magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat, mga kabansa.
Gabi na nga actually, summer evening. Kasi nga, itong summer evening, maliwanag pa.
At narito na naman kami para bigyan kayo ng analysis at evaluation ng mga issues na bumabagabag sa ating bansa pangkasalukuyan. At marami yung napagandang topic ngayong araw na ito at meron tayong panauhin Gusto nating malaman din kung ano kanyang mga pananaw ukol sa mga pinagkakaabalahan natin na makabuluhan ukol sa ating kapitbahay na napakalaking bansa, ang People's Republic of China. So,
Okay.
Ana?
Opo. Magandang gabi din po sa ating lahat at sana po'y nasa mabuti kayong kalagayan. Huwag po kayong aalis, may tatalakayin tayong issue, may panauhin po tayo. At ayan po, marami po tayong aabangan. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, and let me see, where do we begin? Of course, yung unang handa natin na image ay itong si Antonio Trillanes IV, ano? At hindi ba balak ng oposisyon na ipaghati-hati ang administrasyon? Kasi nga, sabi nila, pagka nahati-hati ang administrasyon, may pag-asang manalo ang oposisyon, ang Liberal Party at yung One Sambayan. No? Sabi ng iba, One Sampayan, One Skambayan. Pero mukhang wala talagang maitayo na matibay at malakas na kandidato. At ang Liberal Party ay nag-iisip na magpirata ng kandidato galing sa administrasyon tulad na ni Pacquiao. Sino-sino pa ba ang mga tinitingnan nila na mapirata nila mula sa administrasyon. Pero mukhang imbis na mahati nila ang administrasyon, sila ang mahati tulad nitong reaksyon ni Trillanes. Sabi niya, bakit mag-recruit ang Liberal Party sa administrasyon? Tulad nila Pacquiao, sabi niya, 5 years tayong nagpakasakripisyo, labanan ang mga kasamaan ni Duterte, tapos mauuwi lang tayo sa mga pro-Duts candidates. Di ito katanggap-tanggap, sabi ni Trillanes. Well, mukhang News 5 ang bumabandera ng mga hinanakit ni Trillanes. Well, did you expect that, Madam Ana and Kaado, this reaction?
Actually, I didn't expect na may ganong moves, no? Pero kasi sa politika po, kung alam naman natin ng ating mga kabansa, wala akong tinatawag na there's no such thing as permanent friends and permanent enemies sa politika. So, given na yung sinasabi ni Trillanes, it's just normal in politics. Pero nonetheless, hindi ko po talaga in-expect na may mangyayaring ganon. Kasi di ba, hindi naman nila kapartido si Isko si Isko, medyo na ano ko pa yon parang, probably they will invite him. Pero si Manny Pacquiao, parang hindi, kasi nasa PDP nga po, di ba? Unless na lang po na there's a possibility na magkaroon ng koalisyon ang PDP at saka ang Liberal Party, pero hindi yan mangyayari kung si President Duterte ay nandun. Pero alam niyo po kung ano yung mas interesting. Nung nakinig ako ng press briefing ni Spokesari Roque, that was Tuesday, I think, or Friday, because I always watch the press briefing and make it sure na updated ako sa issues and from the source itself, no. Sabi ni Spokes Roque, sinabi daw ni Pangulo, if I've heard it right, na alam naman daw niya na ang PDP laban ay actually partido ng mga Pimentels. So yun yung statement. So sa statement na yun, I don't know, siguro kung hindi talaga magkasundo-sundo, there's a possibility that the president probably would break out from PDP, and then ang tanong ko kasi diyan ganito. Nung wala pa si presidente sa PDP, ang PDP laban, iilan lang yung hindi ganoon karami yan kasi hindi naman yan majority party before. So ngayon, pag umalis kasi nga mayroon silang problema ni Manny. Actually, it's a world, malinaw na yun, no? Na may break up, kumbaga sa magkakaibigan may break up. So malinaw yan eh. So ngayon, pag umalis si Digong sa PDP, ang problema dyan, karamihan din ng mga members kasama dun sa presidente natin. So, may possibility. Pero may tanong din po ako sa inyo, Kamentong, kasi kayo, Kamentong, ang alam ko po, naging part kayo or isa kayo sa founding members ata ng PDP. Yun. Ano ba yung tingin nyo sa nangyayari? At saka bilang founding member, ano ho ba yung ano talaga dyan? Kasi ang daming issue, no?
That was way back in 1981 or 1982. Ganyang katagal na po. So that's been 30 years ago, 30 to 31 years ago. No? And I was still 40 years old at that time because I'm now 70. So it's been a long time. I was with the Christian Social Movement and itong isang naging kandidato ng mayor ng CSM or Christian Social Movement, si Buti Jose. I don't know if Ado ever met Buti Jose. He passed away already, of course. And he assigned me naman to meet and to bring Nene Pimentel to Manila para magsimula nga ng bagong partido. And so yun ang simula. And so we worked together with many others, sila Linggoy Alcuaz and sila yung mga sila Guben Canoy, Bono Adasa had their own games at Cagayan de Oro. Si Nene Pimentel was from Cagayan de Oro. This became Nene's turf, no? Kanyang And we had a congress, the first founding congress in Cebu. Nagbarko lang kami kasi wala pa namang masyadong pera at that time. Yung mga kabataan na recruit namin, at mga representatives from Luzon, nagbarko lang kami. Well, they were happy times, but eventually, as the years passed, naglitawan ng mga personal na ambisyon ng ibang mga founding members. Si Nene Pimentel, sinolo na niya ang PDP para lumakas at makakuha sila ng pera sa Liberal Party at kila Ninoy, nagsanib at naging PDP, Laban, and so on. But it was supposed to be an ideological party, but it never prospered, as an ideological party. Kasi ganyan ang mga partido natin sa Pilipinas, talagang hindi po base sa ideology, kundi base sa ambisyon at pera ng mga nagsusuporta ng mga kandidato. So anyway, it became the party of Nene Pimentel, nagamit ni Nene, while I left and sought to start other more ideological parties. Ako at si Kit Tatad, nagtulungan kami para ma-register ang Socialist Party of the Philippines. Pero ganyan din po ang nangyari. So mukhang matagal pa po na magkaroon tayo ng isang tunay na partido. I have a comment here from just a moment, which I will now refer to Kaado. Let me look at it. From Dante Sumaong, good evening to all of us. Natanggap na niya yung aklat ni Kaado. Maraming salamat daw. May tanong lang po daw kay Kaado. Kaado, ang tanong sa iyo, kamag-anak mo, niyo po ba si Dolphy?
Opo. Ang mga Quezon po ay galing sa San Jose, Batangas. At ang mga ninuno namin ay yung isang Shanghai ay pumunta sa Baliwag, Bulacan. Pero yung po ang sa Shanghai na ni Dolphy. At yung mga ninunong Shanghai ko naman ay tumuloy sa Lipa at through the San Antonio Road ay nakarating ng Chaong, Quezon at doon na nagsettle. Kaya kasi ang karamihan ng mga taga-Lipa at taga-Chaong ay magkakamag-anak. So, pero ang puno niyan ay San Jose, Batangas. So, pero lately lang po nagkaroon ako ng pagkakataon nung mamatay na si Dolphy na magkaroon ng koneksyon uli. Pero napakalayo na po talaga ng ika nga, isang dugo kami pero ang relasyon namin ay more of affinity na ngayon.
Ay, meron naman kayong sineshare, Kaado eh. Pareho kayong mapagpatawa. Anyway, so marami nang nakakatanggap ng libro mo, Kaado. Si Arnel Batang din, nagpapasalamat sa libro. Goping na goping yung picture ni Kaado doon sa libro. Yun na isang joke po yun kasi yung larawan ni Kaado dyan ay 40 years ago or 50 years ago.
Ano ho yan? Kinunan ho yan noong 2006.
Okay.
Oo. Pero Mentong, oo. Meron pa pong tanong sa ating audience?
Yeah. Ano yun?
Okay. Wala naman po.
Hindi. Tinitingnan ko pa nga kung anong mga reaction pa dito. No? We will try to read some of the reactions later. Okay. Okay, so yan po ang sitwasyon ng opposition ngayon. And hindi ko naman ginawa ng image lahat ng mga issues, pero I think it's a good time to show that video. Joshua, can you, Chris Aquino? Kaya ba, Joshua, at this time? Ayan na.
Lumabas pa siya ng car?
Oo nga, yan, no?
Ano nangyari?
Hindi, nasa car na siya tapos lumabas pa.
Nagkakaway ko parang kandidato na. Merong mga lumabas na mga pictures ng mga nakalinya na naka-yellow flags, no? Yun naman sa palagay ko, organisado talaga nila at nag-photo op lang. Kasi hindi naman laganap yung mga nakalumabas para magpaalam and so on. So, that really raises a lot of questions kasi yung mga tinatanong ni Bobby Tiglao ng Manila Times sa Facebook niya nilalabas, talagang bakit nag-iisa nung namatay? Bakit sa yaman nila wala man ng nurse na binigay, walang caretaker? Bakit parang nilayuan ng lahat ng mga malalapit na malalapit na mga kamag-anak, kapatid? Parang nagkaketong itong taong ito na iniiwasan ng sariling mga pamilya. I don't know, but there has been no answers to these things, di ba?
Wala.
Wala, no? Kado.
Walang explanation.
Kitang-kita
pala talaga, no, si Chris. Anyway, Kado, yes, go po.
Hindi na kasi relevant Hindi na relevant tong mga Aquino At actually, bilang na naman ang boto dahil na kay Duterte, Smartmatic. Siguro, hinahawakan din ni Duterte, Smartmatic. Para nga, huwag makabalik na itong mga ito. Pero yung sinasabi mo, Mentong, isang dating presidente ng Pilipinas ay namatay. Alisin ko na yung 2 PSG na gwardiya. Pero para naman ang isang tao ay mamatay na kasama lamang ang paborito niyang driver.
Paaso.
At ang kanyang paboritong yaya at ang kanyang paboritong aso. Pero itinatago itong mga ito
Oo.
May at saka I remember a few months ago, pinauwi na si Joshua kasi there is something more than COVID that must be so infectious na kasi may denial na may lung cancer siya. Lung cancer, hindi naman infectious siya. So, ewan ko, ang theory nila rin ka doon, HIV. Hindi naman, wala namang confirmation yun. Pangalawa, walang autopsy, walang sinunog kagad. Meron pinagtatakpat itong mga ito, maraming sekreto itong mga Aquino na ayaw nila mabulgar
I think yun ang malinaw. May pinagtatakpan, may tinatago, Kaya maraming misteryoso, maraming question mark na hindi nila sinasagot. So we can leave it at that, pero I think tuldukan po natin, hindi tuldok po, kundi question mark talaga ang mga nangyari dyan. Yes, Ana?
Oo, kasi ang dami talagang speculations. Kasi doon naman po sa explanation ng pamilya, kasi pinakinggan ko po yung speech ni Madam Balse. Sabi niya, ang ata is parang related sa kidney, renal?
Renal.
Renal, oo. Tapos yun yung yun yung problema ata na nasakit. So parang, at saka yung ano yun? Yung sa sugar, ano?
Sugar, diabetes.
Diabetes na may parang complication na something like that. Yun yung explanation nila. Tapos parang sinasabi niya na si Pangulong Aquino daw ayaw niya ng pinoproblema siya ng kanyang pamilya. Kaya parang yun ang nagiging explanation kung bakit siya mag-isa. Parang gano'n ang dating. Pero wala mang explanation at all na malinaw din talaga. Doon sa mga questions and speculations po. Katulad nung na-mention po ni Attorney Lariga doon sa nung in-interview siya natin. Parang wala lang. So,
Yeah.
they're trying to, they're trying to downplay
Yeah, I think that's clear. They tried to hype it, pero hindi nag-click. Now they're downplaying. Okay, and so, ano pang ibang mga
Ito
political?
naman si Chris.
Yeah. Si Chris,
Wala
yeah.
naman
Ayan.
yung pamilyang yan, wala naman talagang transparency ever since. Kunwari, family secret, secretive, privacy, bullshit. Presidente ka ng Pilipinas, you belong to the people, you idiot.
Public figure, kumbaga.
Okay, let's go to Pacquiao's questions naman at yung mga gimmick ni Pacquiao para mapansin at yung kanyang allegations about the Duterte corruption is double that of the previous administration.
Actually, triple nga daw sabi niya.
And again, as in the past gimmicks ni Pacquiao, mukhang nag-fall flat, kaado.
Well, una yung kanyang pabahay, kalokohan yun wipe out all the squatters in 4 years.
That's impossible.
With prayers. Sabi nga ni Pastor Kibuloy, ano sabi ni Pastor Kibuloy?
For simplistic mind.
Prayers make miracles.
Oo.
Ano kalagay doon? Diba? Make miracles. Mali pati si Kibuloy mali Hindi naman yung prayers make miracles Ang Panginoon ang gumagawa ng mga miracle. Hindi yung prayers. Ito naman si, nasusobrahan yata ng basa ng Biblia
Sino po? Si Manny?
Abolisin daw niya ang squatters. Hindi ba niya ba alam na pinakamadugunang nagsumot niya si Marcos? Ang mga squatter money, pag binigyan mo ng bahay, titirahan niya ng mga 6 na buwan. Okay? Saan mo dadalhin? Dalhin mo, malapit sa livelihood nila, pero it's almost impossible. Ngayon, after 6 months, alam mo ang gagawin mo sa bahay na binigay mo, Nani? Pauupahan yan. O di kaya ibebenta. At babalikan doon sa ilalim ng tulay. Because money, informal setting in the Philippines and squatting is a behavioral problem.
I would agree.
Yeah,
It's not just a matter of squatting or being provided a resident. No? Lalapit yan. Kumari lang. Kung nagtatrabaho yan sa Film Life Building doon sa Paseo de Rojas, kumari lang doon sa garahe ng Paseo de Rojas na Film Life titira yung mga yun.
Let's look at it holistically. Hindi lang subdivision para sa squatter ang kailangan, kundi hanap buhay din. Hindi hanap buhay at bahay, kundi transportasyon patungo doon sa trabaho at pauwi sa bahay na yon. It is more complex than what Pacquiao thinks. People believe, And you need
marami ako naging Mentong experience. Dahil ako number 1 producer at fundraiser ng Gawad Kalinga sa US. We were already collecting $700,000 a month. nung maputol yan. Shelter, health, education, livelihood, and food. Yan ang basic, Manny Pacquiao. Kung atin ka lang ng ang maestro at iba pa, Beautiful Sunday edition, bigyan ka namin ng diploma, marami ka matututunan. So, pangalawa, ito sinabi niya tungkol dito sa, may itong pangalawa? Meron siyang bago ngayon eh. Corruption.
Yung corruption.
Wow! Corruption. Miski 12 years ka pa, umupo dyan, Manny. Hindi mo matatanggal yan. Kasi endemic. Endemic. Ang endemic, masahol pa, Manny, sa epidemic at sa pandemic.
Kung ang China po,
pandemic, may bakuna.
Kung ang China po, sa loob ng isang taon, 300,000 ang kinakasuhan nilang corruption. Hindi pa rin, 300,000 sa loob ng isang taon ang kanilang kinakasuhan. Hindi pa maubos-ubos ang issue nila sa corruption. No? Kaya ang strict na nila, napakalakas na po ng ruling party at ng gobyerno at napaka-committed si President Xi Jinping, andyan pa rin ang corruption. Siyempre, nakokontrol na nila. No? Pero yun na nga, napakalaking trabaho yan.
It's under control in China, but it's a human frailty. It's a human frailty. No? So, wag natin alisin yan sa nasa loob yan eh. Nagsimula yung problema niya sa mansanas eh.
Wag na tayo lumayo sobra kaado. Babalik tayo sa Biblia.
Naman Eve. Pero ang mahirap kasi kay Pacquiao naman po. Ang ko sa kanya, I mean, okay lang naman siguro na you be critical, no? Pero ibase mo sa facts at saka before siguro siya magsalita, ayusin niya muna yung kanyang mada kasi ang problema sa kanya, hindi pa siya nagpa-file ng COC niya. Mahirap lang wala na. May nanalo na. Yun ang sabi ng mga netizen eh. May nanalo na. Hindi rin niya inaayos yung kulang eh. Kaya nga, hilaw eh. At saka, hindi based on well thought ang kanyang mga pinagsasabi. Tira siya ng tira na parang sabog eh. Nasa hangin. Tapos pag binalikan siya, ayan na. Ipit na siya, nasa trap na siya, wala na. Wala na. Ligo na siya.
Kala, yung kanyang tatlong advisor went under the ears. No? Una, si Coco Pimentel. No? I can't imagine Coco Pimentel functioning on his own without Nene. He has always been under the shadow of Nene. And he still has to prove himself. Who is Coco Pimentel anyway? Is PDP Laban really a heritage of Nene Pimentel? Yung mga issue na yan. Pangalawa, si Ron Munsaya. Yung insertion dyan ni Chavit Singson. Sino ba yan? Diyos mio. Sino ba yung Ron Munsayak na yan na kagagraduate lang yata niya sa University of Hard Knocks? Pangatlo, yung isa sa mga Visayan congressman, yung si Benitez. Wala pa rin yun. Wala eh. For some reason, na-hostage nila si Pacquiao. Na-hostage nila at bolang-bola, bilog na bilog ang ulo. Bilog na bilog ang ulo ni Pacquiao.
Sige. Anyway, naalala ko lang, talking about this housing issue, diniscuss natin yung China has 96% urban home ownership. 96%. Tulad natin, kung ikukumpara, we have at least 50% urban squatting. 50%. Ano?
That's the opposite of it, no?
Oo. And so this brings me to the question nga, kung paano masosolve ito, kung sa kasalukuyang sistema natin, yung ating land ownership issue or housing issue ay hindi ma-address ng gobyerno dahil kailangan bumili ng lupa, etc. etc. Ang gobyerno para tayuan, tapos ibibidding sa private contractor and so on. Talo talaga eh. Hindi makakahabol eh. Samantalang China is socialist. Ano? So committed sila to give everybody as much as they can, housing, education, yung mga lahat ng mga basics. Yung sinabi ni Kaado, nung panahon ni Marcos, it was being attempted. Kaya may Human Settlements Ministry noon, si Imelda Marcos, may Pag-ibig Housing, and anong tawag nun, tenement housing. It had another name at that time. And of course, you had a strong state na kayang i-command ang mga resources. Ano? Well, wala yan eh. Yan ang problema eh.
Kapag, Mentong, sa China ba, basta-basta ka makapagpapalit ng residence without the permission of the state? Hindi pwede. Hindi pwede. No? Kaya nga, importante itong national ID. Pag lumabas to eh. This might be a step in that direction. Eh, kung walang, kaya sabi ko, it's more behavioral than anything for now. But of course, when you bring up, just like China brought up people to almost zero ang poverty rate, then there is some level of affordability.
Yes.
Kung miski bibigyan sila ng pabahay, meron silang wherewithal, meron silang panghulog, miski na magkano, para maka-establish sila, mag-take roots sila at some place. Eh dito wala eh. Yung routing ng tao, yung livelihood, meron dyan. Mentong, sino? Si Melchor Magdamo, Mentong. Hindi naman siya squatter, no? Kaya lang, sa Candelaria nakatira yan. Araw-araw umuwi ng Maynila. Paano ngayon yung mga behavioral na yan? May mga taga-Angeles, Pampanga, doon nagtatrabaho sa Calamba. Karamihan na sa Makati, sa nakatira, sa Quezon City. Hindi lang squatting ang nagiging problema dyan, traffic nagiging problema dyan, public transport nagiging problema. It has to be integrated once and for all. That is why I will connect it to this earlier statements na ginawa natin dito. Nasimulan na from the vicious cycle of Cory the mother to Noy the son, no? Nasimula na towards real change. Kaya importante, and this is makarating sana kay Manny Pacquiao, ang issue rito ngayon ay kung paano itong nasimulan ni Duterte na hindi naman sapat, gawa 6 na taon lang, no? Ay maaaring ituloy at magkaroon ng momentum para from the 5 steps of the ladder, makarating tayo sa 10 steps to 12 steps of the ladder. Para tuloy-tuloy na ito. Kumbaga, umaarangkada na tayo, makabuelo ng gusto para tuloy-tuloy na. Dito sa ginagawa mo, ano ba yung na-introduce mong bagong political thought, Manny? Sususun tao sa gobyernong pagkalaki-laki ng utang? Teka muna. Kailangan siguro matuto muna tayong magturo sa ating mga mamamayan ng makahulugang livelihood. Whether may trabaho o wala, we have to be productive.
Well,
yung mindset na yun.
As you said, kailangan holistic yan. Ano?
Yes.
Hindi mangyayari ang isang magandang bagay kung walang ibang mga uunahin din dyan. Ano? So, kaya mamaya pag-usapan natin kung bakit ang China nagagawa niya yung maiahon ang 800 milyong mahirap sa bayan niya, to middle class. sa loob ng napakaiksing taon. Isang bagay na hindi magawa-gawa ng Estados Unidos sa 200 taon ng Estados Unidos hanggang ngayon na naging pinakamayamang bansa ng itong nakaraang siglo. Hindi magawa-gawa. Samantala sa China, nagawa nila sa loob ng 50 taon, and yung huling 100 milyong mahihirap ay kanilang naiahon nung nakaraang taon. Ano? Mamaya pag-uusapan natin yan before we go to our interview this evening. Ano? Let's move on to the next subject matter. And ito kaya ko sinama po ito, paalala lang po dun sa mga anti-vaxxers o yung mga anti-vaccine. Ito po mula sa Forbes magazine, June 24, sulat po ni Jemima McEvoy, Forbes staff, na ang kanyang headline, 99% of people killed by COVID nung nakaraang buwan lang, nung Mayo, 99% of people killed by COVID last month were unvaccinated, ayon sa mga analysis.
Oh, wow.
So yun ang suma total ng argumento laban dito sa mga anti-vaxxers. Sooner or later, tatamaan din kayo kung hindi kayo mag-ingat. Ay marami sa mga anti-vaxxers, anti-lockdown pa, anti-restriction, anti-quarantine. Sa Amerika, maraming balita na yung mga nag-aantay ay maraming namatay. Nagsisisi nung huli na. Dito, hindi naman ganyang kalaganap ang ating reportorial system, reports, and so on. So baka hindi natin na sasaga. Pero siyempre, yung ating kaibigan, si Perry Callianta, kumpante dahil na-vaccinate na siya, nag-ivermectin siya, tinamaan pa rin siya. So, anyway, this is a reminder na yung ibang mga kakosa natin sa ibang mga pinaglalaban natin, yung mga anti-vaxxers, sila Butch Valdez ba, anti-vaccination? Kaana?
Hindi ako sure kay Sir Butch, pero ang mga kasama
niya.
Yung mga ka-age ko lang or younger than me, meron silang parang grupo na parang they're against the vaccine. Sometimes hindi ko rin mag-gets yung kanilang argument kasi they're not scientists naman, they're not medical practitioner. Pero sometimes they do have some yung mga parang pinapakita nilang mga scientific study daw or may mga doctors daw saying na yun nga, blah about vaccine na hindi pa daw yan 100% na sure na okay yung mga vaccine. Sabi ko, may mga studies naman na nagpo-prove at ang dami na ng trials na nagpo-prove na the vaccines are actually effective. Especially when you talk about moderate, severe cases at saka prevention of death. So, yun naman po talaga ang importante ngayon kasi yung lahat naman ng vaccines, ma-Western man yan, ma-Chinese po yan, they're all under AUA pa lang, yung emergency use. Hindi pa yan talaga kasi patuloy po ang pag-aaral at patuloy pong ini-improve ang mga vaccines na meron tayo. Pero given the pandemic, at given yung impact ng pandemic na to, not only on the economic side, even on the social aspect of life ng tao, I think it's but important na gamitin po natin ang bakuna as additional protection. Pero kapag may bakuna ka na, it doesn't mean na maging ka rin, complacent, no? Na mag-street party ka kasi alam niyo po kami itong kaado, may mga nag-street party na ngayon kaya napafile ng kaso ng DILG. Kasi hindi pa naman po dapat ganon. Dapat pa rin mag-ingat kahit may bakunas, observe health protocols pa rin, yung minimum health protocols kasi hindi ibig sabihin na may bakuna, hindi ka tatamaan. Tatamaan ka siguro, depende sa katawan mo, sa lakas ng katawan mo, at immune system mo.
Yeah. By the way, si Florence Eknerov, I think, is in Singapore. Natanggap daw ng mga anak niya yung libro, Kaado. Pinadala niya sa Baguio kasi alam niya sobrang mahal kung padadala pa natin sa Singapore. Salamat, Florence. And so, basahin daw muna ng mga anak niya bago ipadala sa kanya sa Singapore. Okay, and so those ideas will be circulating around the world. Anyway, dito sa vaccine, meron ding batayan yung ibang natatakot sa vaccine. Kasi nga, experimental nga yan and so on. But ititimbang natin lahat yan. Ano? Kasi yung security ng mga tao, yung kalusugan ng mga tao, depende yan sa ating iaabiso. May mga risk pero kumpara sa pangangailangan ng protection, you have to decide on the safe side. Ano? Merong mga conspiracies tulad ng mga Western companies na gustong tumubo, pinipigilan nilang kumalat ang mga vaccines para mapilitang bumili sa kanila kahit mahal. Pero hindi naman ganyan ng China at Cuba at Russia at iba pa. Ano? So you have to, if you go anti-vaccine because the West is trying to make money out of it, shut out mo naman yung mga hindi ganyan ang motibasyon. Di ba? Mas mabuti ang motibasyon. So yan lang, no? Kasi meron namang nag-text sa atin, last time may nag-text dito sa comments na yung Spanish flu, 50 million daw ang namatay dahil sa vaccine. That is totally untrue and without basis. Kasi wala pang vaccine nung panahon ng Spanish flu. Wala pang vaccine, pero mayroong naglabas na ganyan, ano, mayroong naniwala kagad, ano, without extensive research, ano. So anyway, this is our commitment to our audience na we will always try to advise what is the safest, what is the most reliable course of action on any of our problems and issues. Kado, you're going to say?
Yung pinagagalingan kasi ng grupo ni Butch, nagsimula yan noong panahon pa ni Butch. Yung tetanus toxoid vaccine ay nilaced ng HCG hormones at about 3.4 Filipino women were vaccinated. And pinagtataka nila noon, ang pinili ng mga binakunahan ng ganon was yung childbearing. And then, so they found out that the HCG hormone was in fact an abortifacient. At marami doon sa 3.4 million na yun ang hindi na nagkaanak. Pangalawa, yun na nangyari sa Dengbaxia. Pero hindi na tayo papalaot doon. Marami namang nakakaalam na sa inyo kung ano po ang nangyari doon sa Dengbaxia. Pero pagdating naman sa pandemya, ibang storya naman po yan. No? Meron na naman akong karton, Mentong. Meron na naman akong karton na nabasa. Nag-uusap dalawang tao. Ang sabi niya doon sa kanyang katabi, sabi ni person A, nagpabakuna ka na ba? Sabi niya gano'n. Hindi, sabi niya, pinag-aaralan ko pa ito. Talagang sinasaliksik ko mabuti, nire-research ko itong mga bakunang to. Sabi niya gano'n. Alam mo, sabi ng katabi niya, ni person B, huwag ka nang mag-research. Sabi niya gano'n. Dahil ikaw ang experiment dito. Dahil totoo yan. Sa COVID, wala namang animal testing na nangyari. Kaya nga lahat ng mga animal, lahat ng mga daga at saka mga pangolin at saka mga panike, naghihintay ng turn nila kung ano mangyayari sa ating mga tao dahil lang nangyari dito sa COVID, tayo ang human experiment. And because of the exigency, hindi naman ho yan talaga ang procedure. So, naunahan wala tayong magagawa. In fact, si Fauci, sinasabi nila, bakit mo nilipat sa Wuhan bakit mo nilipat doon sa Europe, bakit mo nilipat sa ganitong lugar? Bakit? Pinagbawal, pinaghigpit sa US. Hindi nila pwedeng itigil yung science. No? Now, because of that, naunahan. Ano magagawa natin?
Ang isang tanong tungkol kay Fauci at sa China, bakit naman tinanggap ng China yung subcontract na pag-aralan yung coronavirus and so on sa Wuhan? Well, that's knowledge and that's science. And every opportunity, tatanggapin yan ng iba't ibang mga bansa. But the US, of course, has other motives dyan sa kanilang experiments. And tulad ng nuclear weapon, tulad ng ibang mga armas, technology sa armas, may dual purpose yan, may dual use pala ang tawag, dual use. Pwedeng civilian use na pakinabang din, pero meron ding military and other unsavory use. Meron yan. A country, a nation, people will have to decide how to use it, and so on. So yun naman ang motivasyon ng China and international community, kasi ang Frances naman na nagpondo ng building ng Wuhan Institute of Virology. And so the Chinese side naman, maraming matutuhan dito. Kung may peligro, handa rin naman sila, and so on. So decision making is more complex than what some people would like, di ba? Madam Ana. If there's
definitely.
Kasi doon sa bat research, well ahead yung Wuhan, kaya doon nilagay yun.
Oo, pero na po yan yung tawag nito na nanggaling daw sa animals. Ang WHO na ang nag-rule out na it's not actually probable. At saka yung lab leak sa Wuhan, ni-roll out na rin, parang ruled out na yan ng WHO. It's
That's
just
right.
that, marami lang, ang lang talaga yan, yung Amerika lang talaga, ang trying to insist doon sa tinatawag na intelligence, whatever. Pero actually sa mundo, hindi na yan pinapansin ata, even ng other countries
Well, yung attitude ng Amerika really shows that they may be hiding something also. Kaya itinatapon kaagad nila sa China. Binabato nila ang China para doon ang pansin. Samantalang WHO at maraming scientific sinabi, walang kasalanan ng China dyan. Nandyan ang ebidensya. Binuksan ng China yung Wuhan Institute of Virology to a dozen or 2 dozen scientists from WHO. Tapos yung ibang mga nababasa natin, sinisiraan WHO. And kahit na may mga flaws ang WHO, it's still the best because it has 196 members or so, ng iba't ibang mga nasyon ang nandyan. At yung funding galing sa iba't ibang mga bansa rin. Sige, Kado, yours lang say.
At Mentong, nung gamitin ni Trump sa politika ito, nagpasusog na rin yung mga think tanks at saka yung mga NGO sa US for the possibility of a lawfare. In fact, that's part of my book. A chapter is devoted, 1 or 2 chapters are devoted for observing how they were preparing for lawfare, yung the use of legal, kasi pagturo nila sa China, they wanted China to be paying indemnification at some point in time.
Well, actually,
I also ruled out,
Yun ang isang maitim na nasa isip ng ibang mga nasa kanluran, lalo ng mga Amerikano. Dahil ang kanilang utang sa China bumalik na, tumaas na naman to over $1 trillion. There is no way, and everybody, even the Chinese, know the Americans will not pay that. Even in the long run, they will still not pay. The only way they can wipe it out is gera. So yeah, Ana, you were nodding your head.
Oo, yan tama kayo dyan Gera lang yung dyan, pero of course, China will not, it's not as if like it's gullible or hindi nag-iisip ng mas malalim. Hindi ganun. Of course, they will always observe yung tinatawag mo, yung peace and prudence, in every decision they make. Kasi ang China is not even a nation state, It's a civilizational state. Matagal na yung nag-exist. Alam na, ang history niyan would always be part of how it conducts itself in this time around. So, hindi yan yung tulad ng America na will just, say something and then bravado and that's it. No, I think they're very prudent, no? The Chinese are prudent, especially the government. Kasi nga, hindi lang dahil din yan sa, dahil lang sa ganun sila. It's not, because it's a product of history. Their history is too long. It's one of the earliest civilization in this world, no? Kasama ang I think, one of the earliest kasama ang Mesopotamia and yung Egyptian civilization and all that. There was no America that time, no? There was not even a Philippines that time. So product yan eh. Kaya nga sinasabi ko lagi din sa aking mga contemporaries, kahit sa mga bata, na for us to learn as a country, paano natin isusulong ang bansang ito, we also learn from our history. And we learn the mistakes that, history has two sides. We have mistakes na kailangan nating tignan para hindi na natin maulit. At yung mga gains ng history na we can actually promote, yung culture natin and all that, para alam natin kung saan direction natin at hindi tayo lost. Kasi sometimes, I'll be honest with you, sometimes, ang Pinoy nalulost kung saan talaga siya pupunta. Alam mo yon, yun yung sad. But of course, it's a learning process. It's a continuing struggle.
Yung kalituhan ng Pilipino ay bunga ng maraming sadyang maling itinuturo, ipinapaalam. Maling sadyang mali. And so disinformation and so on. So, but that's why we're here, no? Kaado, Kaana, we're trying to provide more information or more holistic information to our nation and hope that those who listen to us also bring it to other people. And nagtatagumpay naman tayo, di ba? Nakakatulong naman tayo kahit papano, kaya natutuwid din ang direksyon ng bayan natin. Tulad dyan sa South China Sea issue, ay panalo tayo, talo yung mga nanggugulo. So ganyan lang po, tiyagaan lang. Anyway, let's move on to good news, which is, of course, pinocongratulate ko, pinost ko na ito sa Facebook, to the Philippine-China cooperation. Ang Kaliwa Dam, nag-break ng grounds, no? Kahapon at si Deputy Chief of Mission Tan, yung kaninang nagsalita doon sa APCO, ang siyang isa sa mga nagpala ng lupa para simbolo ng pagsimula ng construction ng Kaliwa Dam na magsusupply po ng 600 milyong litro kada araw pag ito'y nagawa na. Hindi lang po tubig para sa inumin ng mga taga Metro Manila, Rizal, tatlong probinsya. And of course, 14 na milyon o 16 na milyong mamamayan ng Metro Manila, ng NCR. Pero meron din siyempre itong hydroelectric component, and so on. So, it's now 6:54. Kaana, what time are we going to contact our guest? Is it 5 minutes before 7?
Yes po, I'll send a message na po kay Dr. and Attorney Aportadera po. Si Sir Yumel.
We will admit him already, Let me just move my cursor. Yan, i-admit ko na. So, then i-text mo, I-text mo.
Oo, tinext ko na po. Ayan na si Sir, si Dr. and Attorney.
And he's still connecting to the audio, hindi pa connected, so we will wait. And he's using a still photo. Wala pa bang video?
Wala pa ata. Pero connecting na po, no?
Baka narinig na tayo, meron na ba? Nawala. Yun, very.
Ayan na, yay!
Good evening po, Mr. Yomil Portadera.
Portadera, yes sir.
Okay. And Ana will give an introduction first to our audience about Yomil. Ana, please do the honors.
Opo. Pero before ko po i-introduce si Dr. and Attorney Yumel Aportadera po, let me give an introduction po para lang po ma-announce ko rin po yung ating 10 laureates of the 2021 awards for promoting Philippine-China understanding, para ma-mention ko po din yung iba kasi kasali kayo dyan Okay po, mga kabansa, nagkaroon po ng search for the 10 laureates or awardees po ng awards or tinatawag na APPCU. So far po, dahil tatlo po yung process na yan, no? May preliminary ka, which is the elimination round, may second judging, and third judging, which is the final. Tapos bawat judging po, may 3 judges yan. So medyo may pinagdaanan po talaga ang ating mga naging awardees para po sila at medyo meticulous din po ang process. So ngayon po, gusto ko lang pong bigyan ng daan na maano po natin, mapaabot sa ating mga kababayan at sa mga kabansa na nakikinig po ngayon, both sa FB, sa live na to, at saka sa YouTube na mayroon po 10 at it's breakdown po siya ng 3 categories. May Hall of Fame ka, may Outstanding, at may Major Contribution. Sa Hall of Fame, awardees are former First Lady Imelda Marcos and former Special Envoy of the Philippines to China and the Philippine Silk Road International Chamber of Commerce, Chairman Ambassador Francis Chua. Sa Outstanding awardees naman po, isa po ang ating maestro dyan din. Awardees of outstanding contributions are Philippine Association for Chinese Studies, PACS, President si Dr. Romel Banlawi, and then ang ating maestro po sa Global Talk News Radio at saka sa ating RP1 ang maestro si Ka Herman Laurel po, si Ka Mentong. And then kaisa para sa Kaunlaran Incorporation founder si Madam Teresita Angsi at saka yung Confucius Institute of UP Diliman, director po siya. Ito yung institute na language ng Chinese ang pinag-aaralan, mga cultural din, exchanges and all that. Si Dr. Lourdes Tanhueco Nepomuceno. Now, sa pangatlong category po, major contribution, syempre may kasama po ang ating ang ating isang maestro din po. Ang mga awardees po natin ay si Founding President of Peking University Overseas Students Alumni Association, si Professor Jamie Flor Cruz. And then ang ating guest ngayon, na siya pong ating makakapanayam, physician and lawyer, both po siya, no? Lawyer na, doktor pa. And professor at the University of San Juan Agustin College of Liberal Arts in Iloilo, si Dr. Mario Leonardo Emilio Aportadera, lawyer din po siya. And then, President and Editor-in-Chief of Sovereign PH, at syempre host po natin ngayon, and host po ng maestro, host din po ng GMN Opinion ngayon, ay si Mr. Ado Paglinawan, si Ka Ado. At saka yung 51 Talk brand ambassador po natin na si John Nicolo Fernandez. Sila po ang ating 10 ABPCU awardees na kung saan po bibigyan sila ng parangal at sa isang awarding ceremony sa August 6. Yung po namin, yung awarding ceremony po, live stream po yan, makakasama nyo, pwede ko kayo mag-tune in dyan. Sa live stream po yan sa Chinese Embassy po na webpage, yung FB page pala, tapos PTB4, and then APCO page. Ang APCO ay Association for Philippine-China Understanding. So huwag po niyong kalilimutan. 3:00 po yan ng hapon, pwede po kayong mag-join at makiisa po sa isang malaking pagdiriwang po at pagbibigay ng parangal sa ating mga awardees. So ngayon naman po, since ang ating guest ay si Sir Yumel, i-introduce ko lang po siya ng maikli, syempre para po maano po natin. Si Sir is si Dr. and Attorney Mario Leonardo Emilio Aportadera, I currently a faculty member of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences of the University of San Agustin Iloilo. As a physician, he teaches BS Biology, courses such as Human Anatomy and Parasitology. And as a lawyer, he teaches pre-law courses such as International Law, which is my field, no? Political Theories and Introduction to Law. O parehas kami lang field sa kabilang dako. And then, he graduated summa cum laude sa pag-aaral niya ng medisina at nag-aral siya sa University of Santo Tomas. And then he's both a practitioner of law and medicine. O, tignan niyo, hirap niyo, no? Pa-practice ng medicine, pa-practice ng law at the same time. Tapos, marami po siyang nasulat na may kinalaman po sa mga Philippine-China relation. Magpupromote ang understanding. Marami, magtatanungin natin siya mamaya. At the same time po, may isa siyang nasulat na medyo gusto kong malaman mamaya. Yung kinatawag pong Mama Had a Knack for Storytelling, which is some kind of a publication na imparted the story of his mother on how the Chinese think and their way of life. And Dr. and Attorney Aportadera was born to a Chinese mother and a Filipino father. So, magandang gabi po, sir. At congratulations po sa inyong pagiging awardee po. Bati po muna tayo sa ating mga kabansa at sa mga ka-awardees po ninyo. Kayong tatlo po ay mga paparangalan po namin pagdating ng August 6.
Thank you, ma'am, and hello to my fellow awardees. No? But before I start, I would want to do some corrections. No, actually, I am on leave as a faculty member of the at the University of San Agustin since the COVID. I have a hard time with doing lectures through Zoom or online. So I opted not to, only for the meantime. I'm still under contract. Secondly, I graduated summa cum laude in my pre-med course, BS Biology, and went on to finish medicine as an ordinary medical student at the University of Santo Tomas. Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir.
Good,
Sir,
good
kumusta
evening.
po kayo?
Yeah.
Sige, Kamento.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Doctor Yomil. I'll just use your shorter name, Aportadera. Okay, now. Good evening, and I'm very happy to meet you. And I salute your achievements, being both a doctor and a lawyer, which is amazing. Ang dami mong oras na ibinuho sa pag-aaral, Yomil. But you come from, curiosity ko lang, a family of how many siblings?
We are 3 children of a Chinese mother and a Filipino father. Now, I'm the oldest, and I have 2 sisters. They are both of them. Both of my younger sisters are also physicians, practicing here in the Philippines.
Is any one of your parents a doctor also?
No, my mother was my mother was a teacher, and she had a PhD, a doctor in philosophy, and my father was a lawyer.
Nasa family ang pagiging lawyer.
Dr. Aportadera, in 2019, I think it was September, Kaado, our colleague and fellow awardee, and myself and several others like Ambassador Ancomienda, we had a day in University of San Agustin. We spoke to the student body. The one who arranged and helped us arrange this symposium was Celso Cainglet. I don't know if you ever met him. He was assigned to the philosophy department for a while.
Philosophy department is under the same college, no? The liberal arts and sciences, but I have not met because I'm a part-time teacher at the college, and I would only go there during my lecture hours, go home, considering my very tight schedule, my work and my obligations to my family too.
And how do you practice your medicine? What time of the day for medicine? What time of the day for lecture and so on?
I hold clinic in the morning. It's in a small town of Dingle, Iloilo. It's around an hour drive from the city where I am staying. I would usually leave clinic at around 1 to make it for my 3 p.m. lectures at San Agustin. But I also would set appointments for my few clients. I just started a short while with my law practice. So it's just a matter of jogging my schedule. And to be honest, after some time, I thought I could not. It was very stressful to try to finish my clinic at Dingle just to make it for the 3 p.m. I would admit I would come very late, and I had to make apologies to my students who would wait for me.
Dingle. Now I remember that town, the name of that town. Yeah, Dingle. And do you have a copy of your book, your Mama Stories? Do you have a copy that you can show us and our audience social media?
Ma'am Anna may be aware of that. These publications, these stories were posted in my Facebook accounts.
Okay. I'll share it.
I have time. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
So,
So,
hindi pa, it's not yet published in the form of a book.
Actually, if Ma'am Anna is now my Facebook friend, and you would notice, I have been writing about a lot of things and about different topics. So I also write about our travel stories when we would go out as a family. And it has been suggested to me, how about compiling them? I have started with a few and with several pictures, but I still have a long way to compiling everything that I wrote, which are all published and posted in the Facebook.
okay. May question po ako, Dr. and Attorney Aportadera. Sir, ano po yung nag-inspire po sa inyo na to work on and also write and work on Philippine-China relation at the community level and in your community, no? Sino po yung inspiration nyo? Bakit nagkaroon kayo ng drive to work on this issue? Kasi, 'di ba? Alam niyo naman ang Pilipinas, 'di ba? Ang daming issue tungkol minsan din.
Actually, you mentioned that I'm still teaching. I teach international law, and China has a very prominent role in international law. So the real reason is that was just part, not really of advocacy, but voicing my opinion on matters that concern every Filipino as well. So even the so-called arbitral ruling, I would also explain it in my international law classes that there is an opt-out clause that is being glossed over by our media. And China cited that opt-out clause, a particular article wherein they would not submit to the jurisdiction of the tribunal trying the case filed by the Philippine government. So it was as if they would not abide. So what's all the hype? And as you are, I noticed your Facebook account. I also campaigned for President Duterte, and I have been very supportive of his administration. In fact, one of the stories I submitted was, thank you, President Digong, for making us safe, because that very pivot to China would not make us a target for any reprisal or any first strike from so-called enemies of other states. We have an international independent foreign policy which the Philippines should be a friend to all and not being used to fight the enemies of other states. Now, back to the question, I think it would be summarized in the article you mentioned. Mama had a knack for storytelling, because we grew up looking forward to a Saturday weekend afternoon of Mama's storytelling sessions with us all three children. And being being born, my grandmother was a 14-year-old maiden betrothed to my grandfather, Guama, betrothed to Kuakong. She left China as a 14-year-old maiden to marry my grandfather. And these stories were handed down to my mother. And perhaps it was a way for her to serve as a link for a country that she was never able to visit, and for a place that my Guama was never able to return despite her hopes of going back to China. So Mama had a knack of storytelling, and we would listen and now remember those many stories. And perhaps, as I would want to say, these stories of ordinary people, ordinary Chinese, ordinary Filipinos, can best serve as a link for better understanding between our two cultures and our two peoples.
Ano po yung mga usual, like, can you give us a bit of one very memorable story po ni mami niyo po, ng mama niyo po, ng mother niyo po, na hanggang ngayon po, it serves as a, always in your thoughts, na serves as a inspiration pa rin, na like your persistence in, at your own community, you're promoting friendship between two peoples and two societies po, no? At the level po tayo kasi ng peoples to people.
The first thing that would come into my mind about these stories was the one of stories of a newly married couple whose husband was conscripted to build the Great Wall and died during the process. And as usual, the China, is like every myth, it was the wailing of that widow that some portions of the Great Wall broke down, and these remains of her beloved husband were found so that she could give him a decent and proper burial. So, but Mama had a way of interconnecting the story of Great Wall, because the Great Wall defined the Chinese psyche. Now, China was no imperialistic or colonial plans. If you look at the Great Wall, it defines the Chinese psyche. Leave them to their own. Leave the Chinese to their own, and they would feel safe behind their Great Wall. So she would connect that thinking, and that is also why that I will never buy the idea being circulated in mainstream media of what so-called aggressor stance of China, because China, they had their opinion, they had their stand. Is China, every action of China would be to defend its interest, its sovereignty, its place, its area. So that's the connection. She would tell us a story. She would relate it to like contemporary events. No, she died before this arbitral ruling, so she wasn't able to mention about arbitral ruling. But like that, the Chinese were never, and in fact, if I served, they never invaded any country. The war against Vietnam was a punitive action, wherein they would just withdraw after some time. Although they got back Paracel Islands.
Yeah. Well, it's very thrilling to listen to you, at nagtataka ako kung bakit ngayon lang namin kayo naririnig at dapat noon pa.
Oo, dapat matagal na, no? Dapat na-invite natin siya sa mga program natin. Matagal na.
Was it coincidental or providential that I saw your I think notice for invitation for nomination, and I shared it with the one who nominated me. Is a former dean at the University of San Agustin, and she is a very close friend of my mother. So I told her, because she would comment every time I post in the Facebook China, about Philippine affairs, including President Duterte. And I passed her the nomination, and I to ask her what were my chances. So she would nominate me and give it a try, and I think I got a chance to be your guest in your show, and a chance to air my side, to air my opinion on China and Philippine relationships.
And you are, shall I say, an expert in international law. You focused on that, and so you have very good basis for expressing all these observations and opinions about the issues, legal issues. If they may be legal between China and the Philippines. So I'm very glad to hear that. But are you able to bring this to class also? Is this a subject matter that you discuss in class?
Yes, part of international law is one important aspect or tenet of the international law is the equality among the states. And I also wonder why mainstream media gloss over one particular fact. It was not the Philippines that was the first third world country to go up in an international tribunal against a so-called superpower. They forgot that Nicaragua and the so-called contra controversy, if I may call it, wherein Colonel Oliver North was involved, and the country got a favorable ruling against the United States, and it was never implemented. Because who would implement it? The United Nations. These 5 superpowers have veto powers. nobody could enforce whatever ruling. So we have to be realistic. But although behind all this noise and raucous, one could see, especially as a Duterte supporter, that all these issues raised by the opposition was just trying to find and probe a way to hit at the present administration. It's an unrealistic plan to enforce and implement that ruling. Even if you read the tribunal ruling, this is non-enforceable. Nobody could enforce them. Non-binding.
Yeah. Well, that's very comforting to know that you were voicing that all the way down there in the south, while
Yeah,
we here, yeah, in Luzon, we're voicing it here. And of course, you have repeatedly mentioned the mainstream media. Talagang very frustrating ang mainstream media. Talagang hindi lumalabas itong mga what you have been pointing out. No? And I can feel your frustration with the mainstream media. Ano? Pero sa Iloilo, in your area, how's the media been treating the issues? Sunod-sunod lang sila sa mainstream media?
Actually, the so-called China issue in my place in Iloilo is about Sinovac. They would rant on the efficacy, but they never mention. They gloss over the fact that safety. And as a physician, that is where I can enter, and I can share, I can admit, and I can honestly say that in a way, in my town, among my patients, I have been able to convince about get the vaccine that is available, and with more than half of the vaccines in the Philippines came from China, Sinovac. Get it now. So, and I'm grateful and I'm happy to share with you that yes, my patients and other people because from what they learned from my patients, what I told my patients, and I also posted that in my Facebook about after having my first job. I think I submitted that to with the nominator submitted that to Ma'am Ana, no, yung job lang. Because I mentioned that because of the so-called, how do you call that, latent racism against China made, and I would be very vocal about it. People in the streets, I know to speak their language, so I would use their language in a mild and very polite manner. That even your lights, even your bulbs, they come from China. And the most important thing is the live inactivated virus technology is almost over 100 years, given in polio, given in other immunization. So why harp on the so-called efficacy? And in fact, the news this morning, Israel is getting a surge in, and I got it from Global Times. This news, Israel is having a surge in new COVID cases, despite being the highest vaccinated rated country with an American brand, Pfizer.
Yes, well, I'd like to tell you, Dr. Leomil, that our colleague here, Ado Pagminaon, has written a book, and I'd request Ado to prepare one copy to send to you. Ado, do you have a copy before you so you can show at least on the screen? The title is "There is no vaccine for a virus called racism." There.
I'll be happy to receive it, or in fact, I hope to meet you and you can give it on August 6th.
Yeah.
With dedication.
Ado, you have any question for Leomil, Dr. Leomil?
Well, I'm becoming a fan. I'm listening intently, And I just couldn't imagine na we went to Iloilo with Ambassador Encomienda, an invitation nitong ginawa ni Celso Cainlet with sino pa ba nagpunta doon? Si Austin. Si Austin.
General Victor Corpus was with us. General Victor Corpus.
General Victor Corpus. And maybe we could do a repeat of that, Mentong. And this time we will have Dr. Portadera with us. No? This is really.
Yes, I'll be happy, and perhaps if after COVID, that will be another batch of students. I can help out if you need at least in San Agustin, no, in the University of San Agustin, for the physical presence this time. After COVID, we hope to do away with virtual meetings, virtual assemblies. No.
Yeah, well, we had that symposium in your auditorium there at the University of San Agustin. We met your president, the priest, I forget the name at this time.
Father Comendador, sir. Father Frederick
Comendador. Now I remember because I asked him if it's related to General Comendador, the Air Force General. This we should have another project to visit you there, have another symposium on the issue of Philippine-China relations, and maybe also on the vaccine issue, because post-COVID-19, we can discuss these things, no? And you would be the star of the show there. We'd like to watch you there.
And I'm willing to help facilitate. I'll ask people around about the possibility of that once your schedule also allows. If several of you, we will have to fit in that all of you can be available.
Yeah, and I think this time Anna will be joining us to Iloilo.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And yes, and dinner will be on me. And I'll see you around the place. I don't know where were you brought around when you were here in Iloilo? They said that I mentioned food because they say it is said that Iloilo is famous for its food. So we'll go do some restaurant hopping.
Yeah. Well, we went to this one place which was semi-open air and a view of the sea. And then we bought some. Is that honey? Kaado? Was that honey? I don't know what it's called. No, I forget what it's called. But I'm sure you know, Yomil. It's sold by the vendors. And what do you call that?
Yung diwal. They mentioned diwal. It's because it's like a tang.
No, that's a seafood.
Seafood.
Yung molasses.
Yes. Molasses, yes. Molasses.
Anong tawag niyo doon?
Molasses. The word is escaping me. Molasses.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, so 2022, we'll go and see you there.
Yeah, now that you have my email, I think you have my Facebook account. Yes, and I'll be happy to see you around and meet you here.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Gana, go ahead.
I have a question to Dr. Lumel about the award. What do you think, sir, is the significance of this kind of award, and how would you encourage as an awardee, no? How would you encourage our kababayan, especially ang ating mga audience po, na there is value and there's value and importance in promoting understanding between the Philippines and China, no? Given also that China is a rising power in the world. It's a superpower already economically, but it's still rising at the moment. Di pa nga consolidated ata ang kanyang gains, no? So yung niya. So how would you give a bit of message to our kababayan, especially the younger ones, na instead of creating conflict or propagating negative propaganda and all that against China, is much more forging that kind of friendship and understanding. As someone who's been who's a ano, alam mo yun, your mother has imparted you the Chinese way of thoughts and thinking, while you have a father who also is a Filipino. So kumbaga you have both, you have the best of both worlds, kumbaga po.
The best of both worlds, the best of both thinking and thoughts. But going back to that, how to avoid a war. Actually, you have appraised me. You have told me about the acceptance speech to be in just 1 minute. So I'm trying to. I have prepared. I started. I have started with it, and I would quote. A line from the book of Scott Turow, Ordinary Heroes. It's about a World War II move. It's about a World War II setting. And it's about war, and in fact, some scenes were very depicted. It has been also it has been shown as a movie, the novel. It tells. I think I can quote about it. Who are we? But the stories we tell about ourselves, particularly if we accept them. That's the opening line. I have not yet finished. I've just started. I believe that it is not only the stories of ordinary heroes, but ordinary people like my guama, like my mother, stories. Because the stories of among the stories of my mother was about an uncle who joined the anti-Japanese guerrilla, Chinese anti-Japanese guerrilla based in Central Luzon during the war.
Oh,
So
wow.
he was telling Mama, and Mama would tell that story to us, how in many instances it was the Filipino, ordinary folks, not heroes, ordinary folks who sheltered them, provided them food, and protected them from the enemy, from the Japanese. And there is no resistance. It was a common human band fighting against a common enemy and oppression. And so, going back, if not for the external forces and external influences that try to make us fight their enemy, their so-called threat to their sovereign hegemony, a step is to share these stories that I like to write, share these stories with ordinary people, because ordinary people from both sides of the South China Sea, ordinary people in China, ordinary people, they have their stories. And it tells of their stories tell of common human bands of humanity. When they were sheltered by Filipino folks, did not ask, were you Filipinos? Are you Filipinos? You are our friends. You are fellow men. You must be protected from harm. And that was one story that also I remember from the stories of my mother. So in a way, more interaction, more sharing of stories. And of course, we are fortunate to be in these states that our president is very vocal. It would be a massacre. And like what happened in Scarborough, the previous administration was banking on the Mutual Defense Treaty, and when there was a standoff, the other superpower would just tell them to withdraw. So how many times have the Filipinos been taken for a ride? Aguinaldo was made to wait outside the walls of Intramuros because the Spain would not surrender to the Indios, but rather have a mock battle of Manila Bay to justify their surrender to a white colonial power that was the white emerging colonial power, the United States, towards the end of the 19th century. In Bataan, the busting bastards, mostly Filipinos, were made to wait for a mile-long convoy. Now, if Filipinos would open their eyes, what happened to the fall of Vietnam, fall of Saigon, and now more recent events, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, are they going to bet on the American? The U.S. The U.S. is withdrawing from Afghanistan. Imagine how many visas they had to issue to the former civil servants, translators who fear retribution once the Taliban rises in power again, comes in power again. So I think it's about history. It's about more contacts, sharing, and I feel, and I want, and I also believe that from the stories I tell, because it will overcome the stereotype held against the Chinese. The stories I tell, because most of my friends are Filipinos, most of my Facebook friends are Filipinos, most of my students are Filipinos, and when they see the sincerity in my explanation, at least that's a first step forward, no? And I think the so-called misinformation of mainstream media, I call them corporate media, or corporate media, it has also some influence on the general mindset.
That's why we need more like you to like I am just very amazed now. He thinks like us.
Yeah.
We have the
Exactly.
same wavelength. Exactly, no. I'm so happy to meet Dr. Mel.
Thank you, mom. Thank you.
Yeah, I have an article about Afghanistan, exactly as you described your own perception of what's happening in Afghanistan. Of course, I do the same parallel about Vietnam. And maybe if we can get your email, we'll send you some of these articles that we write also. Here is our editor for sovereignph.com, a site, news site and a commentary site. Ado, maybe you can describe your Sovereign PH a bit for Dr. Yomil. Can you show, you are
Or
going to show?
probably we can also publish some of the writings as well, no,
Yes, yes, precisely.
of
Yeah,
Dr. Yumil in Sovereign
Yes.
PH, especially those that talks about Philippine-China understanding, clarifying issues, and things like this, because these are very important in promoting people-to-people relation between the two countries, no?
I think you can see some of the pages in on the screen, Dr. Yomel. These are some of the articles that come out on the site. So we hope to have a picture of you, and we can put your articles there in the
Yes.
Sovereign page.
Yes, mom. It will be my honor, mom, and and I will consider it as that I will be very privileged to share and to have them published in your sovereignph.com.
Yeah. Ado, our editor, you have any?
In fact, meron na ako ditong na meron na akong na capture. One of Dr. Portadera's work here, he was with Lourdes Portadera at Muchanyu Great Wall, and the good doctor had some insight, starting with George Orwell, who controls the past controls the future, who controls the present controls the past. So I would like to get your permission dahil ipapublish ko ito in one of the Balitaan Bayan. That's where I get contributions. And by the way, we also have a magazine. Ito yung latest issue, cover si Bongo. And in the inside pages, meron ding article si Mentong, vaccine, diplomacy, or humanitarianism. And lately, we have been experimenting on going on internet TV. So tri-media na ang sovereignph.com. And with your permission, I would reprint this, edit it a little bit to fit the style of the newspaper. But definitely, I will send you by messenger kung ano yung lumabas, no, doctor. So, ayan. So, ano na tayo. We are now umbilically connected.
So yes, sir. I expressly give my permission and consent to have my publications published with proper credits as author.
Opo.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor. It's a privilege. And as I could not promise anything right now, but now that we have connected, I can try to do some write-up on this arbitral ruling, especially on the opt-out clause that China cited not to submit to the jurisdiction of the tribunal. Uh, there are many instances about this opt-out clause because of maritime delineation, like that what is happening in the Gulf of Mexico, because there is also an overlapping of the so-called EEC in that Gulf. So, and it's very rich in oil. So that's also one issue that could be related to this arbitral ruling. But I have still to do some more research so that it will be very, very worthy of space in your publication, sir.
We look forward to that. We look
Yes, sir.
forward to that.
Just give me time. I think after the August 6th affair, because as I told Ma'am Anna, I'm based in Iloilo. I still have to process this ever-changing IATF rules. But I just learned that if I would just show that notification, I would be considered as an APOR. I could do away with mandatory quarantine because I'm fully vaccinated and with Sinovac, and after I think a negative swab test, so no need for quarantine. That was what I heard last week. So I don't know if it would change after July 15 again.
Have you been issued the vaccination
Card?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
so-
sir. So I have it, and in fact, after my first vaccination, I also posted in Facebook, and I think it's with Ma'am Anna the link, no, about I called it jab lang, and
Oh, yes.
jab lang.
So,
Opo,
Anna,
but
Dr. Leomil, that means on August 6 ba? August 6 ang ceremony.
August 6th.
You
Yes
will be
po,
coming
August
to
6th.
Manila?
Yes, he will come. Oh.
Okay.
I'm arranging it actually for him. We're talking about it, but don't forget to bring the card, the vaccine card, no?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
yeah. We need it. We need it and every way going here. So,
So,
yes.
Doc, what do you recommend if traveling to the distant provinces by plane or by boat is safer?
Distant from Manila to the provinces right now,
Yeah,
or from?
because of this COVID virus.
So I saw your vaccination card. You're fully vaccinated.
Yeah.
I would still suggest not only safer but more convenient is to take it out to travel by air, by plane.
Okay.
So, at saka, and if the travel time is short, no? Short.
More convenient, shorter, like that. And you don't know because of many arbitrary interpretation of the so-called IATF guidelines. Once you go into a control checkpoint, some would interpret it this way. They would not accept this. They would like that, even though you would try to explain. And it would take time explaining. You would be just passing through like that. And plus the weather. You don't know. We are now, I think, in the wet season. And what if you take it by Roro and you will get stranded because of, Pagasa, the Coast Guard immediately cancels travel by sea once there is a typhoon signal.
Okay. Where will Dr. Portadera be staying when he's in Manila, Anna? Do you have a place here?
We're booking the same hotel because so that he will be safe. Because it's not safe to go anywhere around, no? At least he will be safe there. And then for 2 nights, so that's how it is. Because he is not from Manila, so we need to take care of him.
Are you bringing Mrs. Portadera with you for that occasion?
She wants to join me, and I think she is. She has searched online, and she would wear a cheongsam for the occasion. She's Filipina. I'm married to a Filipina, so. But she and my daughter, I would like to call. I have turned them into Sinophile, China loving, China appreciating.
Sinophile. Oh,
Uh,
wow. Sinophile is Chinese Filipino, right? Sinophile.
Sinophile is
Sino is for China, and
Chinese, yeah.
Sinophile is Sinophilic, love for China. Love, appreciation
Ah,
for China, appreciation
as
for Chinese.
against,
Oh yeah, Sinophilic,
oo.
Sino, appreciation for things Chinese, no? The
Opo.
culture. It has more than 3,500 years of history, of culture, of literature. So these were the stories my mother told us.
yeah. Well,
So
actually, Dr. Aportodera could have a regular space sovereign PH. My regular column or space in sovereign PH is entitled Asian Century. And as you were discussing Sinophile or Sinophilic matters, I want to expand that to Asia. Because Asia is really the most exciting civilization. It's the oldest, if you include Indian and the Chinese civilization, for example. Buddhism was borrowed from India. And of course, one of my perceptions in this stage of our history is that the West, particularly the US, is trying to divide Asia and trying to reestablish its hegemony with the Asia pivot of Obama in 2011, trying to come back to Asia to reestablish its hegemony and restore their domination. But anyway, I just wanted to bring up to expand the idea of love of things Chinese to broader love for Asian culture and civilization.
yes. Um, one book that I had reread several times. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The Chinese Machiavelli, written by Dennis Dador. So it shows the art of statecraft from the Chinese, and that they learn the past so that they would not commit the same mistake. We are at this stage at around 200 years ago when China became an envy of the Western powers. And imagine they ran out of silver to pay for Chinese silk and porcelain, and they would sell to China opium. And of course, China, exercising its sovereignty, would seize those opium and throw them to the sea. And that started several opium wars. Eventually, that process, that century of humiliation has also a personal connection to our story, the story of my family. Because that was the time that the ordinary Chinese people bore the burden of preparation payment. And they had to take their so-called leap of faith and kapit sa patalim, like my great-grandfather Ong Lat did. They took with several clansmen from a small village in Fujian, took a wooden hull rickety boat across the South China Sea, risking everything just for the opportunity of the Philippines. And that was you always relate this story to world events. The century of humiliation, the ordinary people bore the burden of reparation payment, the higher revenues to pay these Western powers, not only during the Opium War, but also in the subsequent Boxers' Revolution. And so, in a way, we connect. Now, going back to yourself, the Asian century, yes, everything has come to full circle. And as I like to tell in my lectures to my students, that just over 30, 50 years ago, Japan was an economic power, was threatening the economic hegemony of America. But what Japan did not have that China has was a powerful military. So they left their defenses they rather rely on American, and they could not in world states. You have to dangle the carrot, but carry a big stick as well. So that is the difference. China, by all means, China, the second most powerful country militarily, it cannot beat the US right now, but the US cannot afford to wage war against China. And precisely that is why that is why I admire our president, is because he does not want us to form the outer rim of defense chain against a so-called threat to American interests and hegemony. Why allow the US missiles here aimed at China when we are not enemies of China? So it goes back to, yes, Asian century, and hopefully within our time, yes, Asian, including the Filipinos, will have our place in the sun, away from Western domination, Western interference.
Wow.
Yeah. There,
I'm so amazed. I'm just listening.
there's a
We have
comment.
one maestro in our midst right now.
Yeah. There's a comment here from Joven Federio. Chinese and Filipinos ay galing sa isang lahi. Sabi niya, Shemites, ano. But it's true. We come from I frequently bring this up when I'm asked, and sometimes nasty and hostile commenters to my post would say, why don't you go back home to China? And so paliwanag ko, actually, the most popular, respected anthropological theory of the origins of the Malay-Indo race is the out of Taiwan theory. That it's from South China, South Indochina, that the population moved towards Taiwan, and Taiwan down to Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and so on. So totoo, iisang lahi po tayo. If you go back mga 10, 20, 12,000 years back, and many people don't understand that and don't know that. And so tama si Joven, Joven ba ang nabasa ko, Federio, that we are one and the same race actually. But anyway, ito ang rich discussion that we would like our audience to hear, to follow. And it's very nice to have a discussion with you, Dr. Leomil na lang. Oportodera. Okay, medyo mahaba yun eh. Oportodera. So this enriches our national discourse on these issues, which as you always mentioned, the mainstream media is trying to prevent a holistic discussion of all these issues. Anyway, back to you, Dr. Anna and Doc. Any comments?
Yeah, on my side po, I would just... Oh yeah, si Kado muna.
Right now, I'm behaving like an editor. Nakikinig ako at taking down notes.
On my side, I'm just amazed, no, of Dr. Yumel, the expanse, yung knowledge niya about history between countries and of the world, and also how you impart this to your students. I think that's why, I mean, one of the reason also why I think based on the three process of judging, I mean, Dr. Yumel was chosen, no, as part of the awardees is precisely because when you talk about his it's much more on the grassroots in the sense that he imparts these things to his students and to the community that he is into right now, where he lives, no, and surrounded by many people as well, no, mga Bisayas, mga Iloilos, mga estudyante, and then imparting this knowledge and trying to let them understand world dynamics as against to Philippine-China relation. So I think that's one of the reasons. That's, I think, very important, no? Especially students, because I'm also a professor, by the way, so I understand how it's important, no, to make it sure that your student have the right way of framework, or paradigm in understanding issues that affects the country and the whole world. I think that's very important. So I think that's your important contributions as well in on the issue of Philippine-China relations. It's 7:50, so I would like to ask for our guest to say your closing message po sa ating mga nanonood at sa ating mga kabansa. Marami pong nanonood sa inyo right now.
Ma'am Ana, Sir Ado, and Sir Herman, I thank you for the opportunity. I am a son of China, born out of a Filipino. father. My opinions and my opinions raised over current events, especially affecting our country, not only vis-a-vis China, does not make me less of a Filipino. Not that I love the Philippines less, but it is for the greater good. We have been under Western colonial powers, and now is a chance to have our place in the sun. The United States, Spain as a colony, would never allow, but only use us. Now is our chance, and that is why I hope by telling these stories, the stories of my mother, of her mother, my grandmother, of our family, of our clan, who crossed and at great risk the South China Sea to settle in the Philippines for opportunities. Our country does not have a Statue of Liberty, but there are many Emma Lazarus who would raise that lamp and open and welcome us in with open hands. Our country, our family, especially from my mother's side, has very, very many stories about the kindness and hospitality of the Filipino people. It's just unfortunate that media, mainstream media, would rather forget the interaction of kindness and hospitality that the Filipinos showed, not only to the Chinese, even to the Indians doing their business. We are a great people in our values shared with fellow human beings. So I hope for a better understanding of Philippines and China for our people. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
po,
much.
sir.
And we'll do this again one of these days.
Yes, sir. Just
po.
let me just as I told Ma'am Ana, the available time would usually be at around this time. So I'll be happy to join you, and it's my honor, sir. It's my honor, sir.
It's our honor too and privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you very much. Congratulations po at congratulations sa dalawang maestro natin. Ang tatlong awardees ay nagsama-sama sa isang programa. Diba? What a great day. What a great Wednesday. Thank you po.
So we'll allow our guests to take a rest already. Thank you very much. And we'll engage with you again very soon.
Yes
Yun
po.
po
Thank
si-
you. Thank you, sir. Opo.
Yun po si Dr. Leomil.
Yumil. Yeah, Portadera.
Leomil
Medyo
Portadera.
mahaba po kasi. Opo, mahaba yung name niya.
Oh.
Dr. and Attorney Mario Leonardo Emilio O. Aportadera. Ganun
Okay.
kahaba.
So, meron nga tayong hinanda. Hindi na natin na project dito sa screen natin yung bio note ni Dr. and Attorney
Project natin
Mario
ng konti.
Portadera. Ayan. Ayan po.
Ayan.
Okay, ang last subject matter natin is the ito po yung 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China, and we have this embassy announcement, and they're celebrating the upcoming 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China, an international exhibition of centennial history of the Communist Party of China, and so on. So napakarami po, isang buong linggong celebration sa China, but of course the whole world today is analyzing how this ruling political party has achieved what it has achieved in such a short time. It took Western civilization to reach modernization for in hundreds of years, while the feudal China that the Communist Party of China took over in 1949 to this day is only 70 years old, or 70 ba? A little more than 70. Hindi ko na bibilangin yung mga butal na taon. And has achieved modernization. It is now an outer space power. It is also a military power. It is not something that they try to stress on. They would like to be known as the trading power, the economic power. and the power that seeks to liberate the third world, yung mga mahirap na bansa, from poverty, and bring peace and prosperity to all through the community of shared future for mankind. That is the sum of the whole gamut of the Chinese Communist Party's program. I have just submitted an article to our editor, si Kaado, for Sovereign PH, and it took me the past 3 days to try to see how I can put things into 1,500 words. But anyway, I think it's time now to get your impressions, and lessons from the Chinese experience and the ruling party of China today. I'll start by saying that talagang maganda ang isang sistema na walang paulit-ulit na paikot-ikot na corrupt na eleksyon. Ang China, hindi po totoo na walang eleksyon. Meron silang hierarchical, having difficulty pronouncing that, elections. Meron silang elections at the grassroots level, akyat sa next level, and so on. Pero dahil sa dominance ng partido, ang pagpipili ng kandidato doon sa iba't ibang level, may naggagabay. And marami dyan, mga miyembro ng partido. At bilang miyembro ng partido, sila ay nahubog na sa isang kaisipan at isang direksyon na para sa bayan, scientifico ang pananaw, scientific approach to problem solving. At dahil sa kanilang tuloy-tuloy or continuity ng pamamahala ng lipunan, sila'y nakakapagplano ng mahabaan, strategic planning, medium-term planning, and 5-year planning na hindi po natin magawa dahil after every election, nagbabago ang direksyon ng gobyerno sa atin o sa Amerika, ganyan din po. Ang Amerika yumaman lang po dahil sa imperial power nila for over 100 years at nagpasasa sa yaman ng ibang mga bansa bilang merkado ng American production. And then eventually they became neo-colonies and so on. So mahabang usapan niya. But these are the lessons I pick up from, hindi lang naman China ang walang eleksyong tulad ng liberal electoral system natin. Vietnam, wala. Mas umaasenso ang Vietnam kaysa sa ibang mga kapit bansa nila, kalapit bansa ng Vietnam dito sa ASEAN. So ang question dito sa atin yan ba ay isang bagay na magagawa natin? I throw it now to Kaado and Kaana.
Okay, Kaado, ikaw muna. May ano lang ako, may i-highlight ako dito sa i-share ko.
Well, what we're seeing now, Mentong, what we're seeing now happening to PDP Laban, where we started our discussion this morning, is precisely what is it's a disease already. It's a political disease. This kinumpa, there were two parties. We had a constitution that allowed two parties, but this was the liberal and the nacionalista eventually becoming the dominant parties. But for some reason, the desire to go parliamentary, and in a parliamentary, there has to be a multi-party system. And nawala yan, no? It was replaced by Laban, PDP Laban, Nacionalista was still there, the Liberal was there too, with two wings. And then kilusan ng bagong lipunan. And then it became worse after Marcos with the 1987 Constitution. In fact, medyo nabakla pa kasi katulad ng party list. Party list is part of a parliamentary form of government na ipasok dito sa presidential form of government dahil bumalik ang 87 Constitution from parliamentary to presidential. And so what we have now is really a birthday party. Kung sino ang dominant personality will celebrate the birthday party. It started with after the kamataang the kilusan ng bagong lipunan, the dominant party became the lakas ng yung LDP, Demokratikong Pilipino, which was dominated by Mitra and most of the Aquino people. And then it became, nung pumasok si Ramos, no? Well, it became the Lakas Tao, which became the Lakas NUCD. And then pumasok si Erap na palta naman niya ng Partidong Masang Pilipino. And then the Partidong Masang Pilipino was replaced by backing Lakas, but this time not with NUCD anymore, but with Campi. And this was defeated by the Liberal Party. And this was defeated by a smorgasbord of parties led by the PDP Laban behind Duterte. And now PDP Laban is crumbling and it's giving way to Hong Kong. It's giving way to a possible coalition with the National Democratic Party. So, hindi mo pa tayo nahihilo. No? There are models around us which will render more justice to a growing population. 110 million na po tayo mga kabansa. Hindi na biro ito. No, kung lumalaki, almost 30 million lang yan on the average. Nag-triple na po, mag-quadruple mo during my lifetime. And yet, the bad habits of Filipino in politics. Why? Because we were predominantly dominated, sabi nga ni Junil Aportadera, by this colonial influence that is not with us para tayong nasumpa ng 500 years. Nung dumating si Magellan at itinanim niya yung cross ng, sa Cebu. Napasok tayo ng mga banyaga. So, now with Duterte, we have a new beginning. If only for this, we ought to copy the Communist Party of the China Communist Party. Because kawawa ang mga tao, ang karamihan ng masa, karamihan ng taong bayan na nagsasuffer because of the exchanging and just recycling oligarchies and vested interest of people who are in power because of these birthday parties.
Okay, let's go to Maestra Ana.
Ako naman, i-share ko yung, kasi di ba we're talking about the Communist Party of China and then how important it is because they're celebrating 100 years. But the most important question I think right now is to understand how important is the party in building a modern China, which kanina yun ang napulot ko dun sa APCO forum. And then I got hold of the speech of DCM Tan ng Chinese Embassy, which is very, very important, very insightful, no? I-impart ko lang ng mabilis, no? The first thing is, China's experienced tremendous transformation. And one of that is under the CPC. And that's something that I think the world cannot deny, no? Major transformation. China has achieved its industrialization in just few decades. No, konting dekada lang, and it developed, and it's a modern China. If you go to China, it's really modern. No, I think the most modern, because I've been to Europe, no, I've traveled all throughout Europe. In terms of, I think in Europe, ang structure, ang historical, because they have a history. But if you go to America, my God, yung infrastructure nila medyo nahuhuli. No, pero may importanteng mga points daw, sabi ni DCM, na dapat maintindihan ng mundo at saka ng Pilipinas, bakit ang CPC is the core of all these things that is happening in China right now, even the space station that they have right now. Ang sabi niya, the CPC is a party representing the overall interests of the Chinese people rather than particular groups. So that's, I think, very important. Kasi dito sa atin, ang political party natin actually represents certain interests, not necessarily the interests of the whole Filipinos, no, but certain interests of certain groups. Most of them belonging to the elites or the political elites, no. That's very different from the Chinese way, no. Ang sinasabi nga niya, ang CPC daw serves the people as a whole. So yun yung isa siguro kasi yun ang nakatanim sa utak ng lahat ng members ng CPC na you need to serve the people and the people is the core, no? Pero dito hindi naman gano'n ata ang lahat ng political parties natin as explained by Kaado. Ang hirap nga palipat-lipat yung mga members ng political parties, walang continuity nga kahit political party. Ang Filipino government nga walang continuity din. Ngayon pa lang ang tama si Kaado. The Duterte administration is actually the beginning of a rebirth, no? It's actually the beginning of a year na dapat sunod-sunod na, continue na, may continuation na. Ang second point niya is the CPC has made the most of its governance system. It has its own governance based on its culture, no, and it's dynamic. Hindi siya galing sa labas eh. It's an indigenous thing within the country based on culture, based on sa culture nila. Ano siya indigenous? Sa atin po, kung titignan natin ang ating governance and structure ng governance natin, it's not based on our indigenous culture. It's based on a Western. Actually, copycat nga ang ating Constitution na 1987 na American Constitution. Even our form of government is a copycat of the US, no? So, what I'm showing is the difference, no? The difference. The third one, at ang sinasabi niya, the CPC adhere to the principle of democratic centralism, which emphasizes collective leadership and collective decision-making so as to ensure informed decision, feasible, and sustainable. That's the second point. Ibig sabihin, hindi mali yung sinasabi na they are not democratic. They are actually democratic. But sabi nga ni kanina, natutuwa ako kanina nung nakikinig ko, kasi daw ang democracy is not democracy na pare-parehas yung lasa. Hindi yan Coca-Cola na pare-parehas yung lasa. Depende sa country yung democracy kasi nga indigenized siya, contextualized siya. Yun yung point na sobrang nagustuhan ko kasi that's actually one of my advocacy, no? If you want to be a democratic, good. But we need to make it concrete, contextualize at saka indigenous sa kultura natin, sa pag-iisip natin, hindi siya from outside the being imposed on us. I think that's a very important lesson. The third is the CPC, according to DCM, has pioneered a path of development that fits China. So, ibig sabihin, they do the development, what is really for China at kung anong doon sa kanila. Hindi yung dictated by certain powers or certain outside forces. So madaling ma-develop talaga sila kasi swak sa kanila, sa kultura nila, sa tao nila, sa pag-iisip nila. Tayo, I think we need to do that, no? We need to have a development model that really fits us, na hindi imposed sa atin. I think that's something also is a challenge for us. Kasi i-review niyo yung development model natin. Most of them hindi contextualized sa konteksto ng Pilipinas. Kasi impose or sometimes borrowed mo, hindi mo ganun tayo eh. That's realities that we have really to face as a nation if we want to improve this country and for us to be progressive. The last one but not the least, ang sabi ni DCM sa kanyang speech is the CPC has all along remained open and inclusive. That's very, for me, that's puzzling. And it opened my mind in many ways. Kasi ang conception ng maraming tao sa China is just because it's a one-party system, hindi na siya open and hindi siya na-exclusive. Pero ang sinasabi niya, ini-explain niya kanina, no, that's not true, sabi niya. It's inclusive and it's an open, though it's one party. No? Kasi nga, ang proseso din nila from grassroots going up, ibig sabihin, yung mga members ng isang political party, nagsimula yan sa baba at pinili yan ng mga membro, hindi lang ng nasa taas, kundi lahat ng party members. So, at saka ng community, no? Kasi tingnan mo nga naman, kung na-reflect ko nga kanina habang nakikinig ako sa forum, si Xi Jinping hindi nagsimula sa taas. Hindi siya political elite na galing sa tulad ng mga Aquino ng Pilipinas, no? Kaya napunta ka sa power is precisely because of your family name. No. Actually, he was like a barangay captain ata nagsimula na pinakamababa hanggang sa I think he work hard and every assignment na ginagawa niya, binibigay sa kanya, napapaganda niya yung mga projects niya and all, hanggang sa na-promote sa pataas. So kung makikita mo rin, yung merit system nila nandun. Hindi ka mapupunta sa taas kung wala ka rin talagang basihan para maging leader ng isang bansa. Kasi wala kang experience, wala kang pinanggagalingan, hindi ka naka-root doon sa grassroots. Kasi si Xi Jinping, grassroots ang pinagmulan niyan eh. Kaya naiintindihan niya kung ano yung nafe-feel nung nasa grassroots, anong problema nila kasi galing siya doon. I think that's very important for us. I had a lot of realization kanina sa APCO forum, I'll be honest, no? Kasi nandun din si Kamentong nakikinig. Na ito yung kanilang core. And they have a 45-year plan na sinusundan. Na hindi yan napuputol, sunod-sunod yan. I'm not speaking here be a pro-China, no. It's not about being pro-China. It's just about studying objectively the country and why it is right now the second largest economy. From a country before na Diyos ko, walang gustong pumunta. Dahil feeling nila sobrang deprived, sobrang parang hindi developed, di ba? Pero ngayon, it doesn't have any poverty at all. Ang tanong, bakit nila nagawa yun at hindi natin kayang gawin dito sa Pilipinas? Pero I believe we can do it also here in this country. If gagawin natin at pag-aaralan natin kung paano nga ba, saan ba tayo lulugar, ano bang history natin, paano ba tayo mag-isip, ano ba ang competitive advantage ng Pilipinas? Yun yung napulot ko eh. Doon ako na-inspire na parang, wow, I've learned a lot, no? From the speech. That was just one speech in 10 minutes. But I've learned a lot. So, nag-request po ako ng copy. Tapos binasa ko ulit. Kaya sinabi ko, sige ka, ikaw muna, kaya highlight ko lang ng konti. So, yun po yung yung sharing ko po, na napulot ko pong aral doon sa forum na inattendan natin kanina po.
Okay, it's now 8:12 by my clock, and we have 3 minutes to close our discussion. Siyempre, ito itutuloy natin, kasi hindi pa natin nabubuo yung sagot doon sa tanong, paano natin magagawa yung nagagawa ng China o ng Vietnam o ng Singapore. Singapore, I say in my article, is a disguised democratic centralist system. Kunwari may eleksyon pero actually People's Action Party ang naghahari ng higit 50 taon na. I don't know how many years right now. Anyway, we have to end our discussion for this evening. May comment lang dito si Juanito Katbagan. Magandang sinabi niya, I like and love listening to your program. Very important and informative. Mabuhay kayo. And dito sa kabila, let me choose one. Good evening po from Judy Comine, watching from Japan po. Mabuhay po kayo. And so we keep all these comments. So we hope we can publish a book later on of these comments. So Maestra Ana, let's say good night to everyone.
Yes po, maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga kabansa natin na laging sumusubaybay at yung mga bagong taga-subaybay namin. Stay tuned kayo lagi. May programa po kami sa Sunday, ang maestro kasama po ang ating mga awardees. And then, sana po yung nasa mabuting kalagayan, mag-ingat sa COVID, and God bless to all.
Tado!
Okay, ilalabas natin yung article ni Yumil Aportadera.
Yes
After yung column ni Kamentong, para medyo lumambot naman ang kaunti. Mapunta sa kwentuhan. Maraming salamat sa inyo. Magkita-kita ulit tayo sa linggo. At yan naman yung beautiful Sunday edition natin. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, maraming salamat Kaado and Maestra Ana, and to all of you. Subaybayan po natin ang mga developments, mga balita sa mga darating na araw at pag-usapan natin ulit sa darating na linggo at Miyerkules po. Mabuhay and have a good day.